Mr. Marles. Thanks for your time, as always. The Prime Minister says we're not going to let Omicron take us back. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Well, I certainly hope he's right. It's really important, I think, that we, having gone through the very difficult period of the last couple of years now, seeing the country open up, that we continue on this path, and obviously being vaccinated is the key to doing that. The rollout of the booster is now going to be fundamentally important in relation to this. It's obviously a good thing that we can get that now a little earlier, but what matters is that we don't see a repeat of the failure in the rollout of the vaccine that we saw earlier in the year when it comes to the booster shot. It's critically important that the government makes sure that the country is getting that booster shot, because it's going to be central to our ability to keep moving forward.
Well, we know the numbers are there, don't we? Tens of millions in terms of boosters. So the supply is not an issue. And now today, this breakthrough, an mRNA capacity to build that sovereign capacity in terms of responding to future outbreaks and future pandemics. That's good news, isn't it?
Well, we've been calling for the development of a sovereign capability in terms of the manufacture of mRNA vaccines now for some time. So this is important that we're able to do this as a country. I would note that last year, in October of last year, the government was saying that it would have this capacity online in 12 months. That means we would be having it now. In June of this year, they said it was going to be another 12 months, meaning next year. Now we're being told that we won't have the capacity until 2024. I think the country owes the Victorian government a debt of gratitude that they've actually been able to pin Scott Morrison down to a timeline here, and that we actually see this happen. But really, this capability should have been developed much earlier. It should have been progressed much earlier than it has been. I think, but for the intervention of the Victorian government, we would still be seeing this government sitting on its hands, the Commonwealth government sitting on its hands, which is what it's been doing for the last few months.
But this technology, many in the space, let alone more broadly, were unaware of developments in this mRNA space up until quite recently. So haven't they still moved relatively quickly? It's not like something you can whistle up in a couple of months.
No one's suggesting that, but this is a government who from day one, and a Prime Minister who from day one has been led by events, has reacted to events rather than getting ahead of events. And we were seeing the development of mRNA technologies during the course of last year. It became clear this was going to be the breakthrough technology. It was the most modern form of vaccine development, and that having sovereign capability when it comes to the manufacture of vaccines was going to be critically important. So that's why we were, from a very early point, calling for the government to develop a sovereign capability in this area and to do it as quickly as possible. And again, we've seen this government saying they'd do it within a year. That would have meant that we'd have it by now. What we've learned today is that we're not going to get it until 2024. And I think we're only getting it then because of the good work of the Victorian government, that they've actually pinned Scott Morrison down.
The outcome, though, while delayed in your mind, do you welcome the fact that it's located in your home state, which is now a powerhouse in terms of medical research?
That's true. The area around Parkville is a really significant, globally significant area of medical research, and it's a real asset for the nation. And of course, it's to be welcomed. And as I said, we've been calling for the development of a domestic mRNA manufacture capability in Australia. So we definitely want to see this happen. From a Victorian point of view, I'm glad it's happening in this state. It makes sense in the context, as you say, of the medical research asset that exists already in Melbourne. So we definitely want to see it happen. It just should have happened a lot earlier.
We've got the mid-year budget update coming in a couple of days, set to confirm some of the growth forecasts for next year. Very strong growth expected, less debt and deficit expected. It's quite a strong launch pad, isn't it, into an election year as we look set to rebound into another strong recovery?
Well, what economic recovery looks like is going to be really important for the nation. And what lessons we learn from the pandemic and how we deal with them, and in this moment really of an unprecedented opportunity to reimagine the country, is going to be critically important. I'd make a couple of observations. We have seen this government preside over record low wage growth, and indeed they've baked in real wage decline over the next 4 years. That's happened in a context where we've seen petrol prices go up really significantly. We've seen rental prices go up really significantly. We're really seeing Middle Australia being squeezed. So that's how people's lived experience of the economy is. And we don't see a government which particularly has answers in respect of any of those challenges. And I think more beyond that, I don't hear the government talking about the need for the country to climb the technological ladder, to build a real sovereign capability in this country, to see that we get back into high-tech manufacturing in a significant way, so that we can make sure that we are building an economy which is generating the kind of secure, well-paid jobs that have been missing up until now. And that's what we actually need to hear from the government. I mean, today's announcement in relation to mRNA vaccine manufacture, that's good. It's still a few years down the track. It's kind of emblematic of the fact that they missed this play a year ago, and it's taken a long time for them to get to this point. But it's actually doing high-tech manufacturing, getting involved in much more sophisticated service delivery, which has to be the key to having an economy which generates the kind of well-paid, secure jobs that we need, and which deals with the issue of meeting the crunch that Middle Australia is facing.
The government wants this to be an election on the economy. Labor clearly wants to make it a referendum on Scott Morrison. Do you feel more confident as we head into this election season than you did last time?
Look, I mean, I think it's right to be holding the Prime Minister to account. This is a Prime Minister who has consistently missed the play. As I say, he has been reacting to events rather than leading them. He's really not understood the challenge that COVID-19 has represented for this country, actually from day one. I mean, right back at the beginning of the pandemic, when we needed to come to terms with the idea of social distancing, he was the one letting the whole country know he was going off to the footy. And at the beginning of this year, when we watched every other country around the world understanding that the pathway out was to get vaccinated, he was telling us all that it wasn't a race, and as a result, millions of Australians spent months in lockdown, which they didn't need to do because of this government's failure in terms of rolling out the vaccine. And now, as we talk about economic recovery, I mean, there's also a skills crisis, which the country is absolutely facing. We're not training people in the way that we need to. That's because this government's cut billions of dollars out of TAFE over the last 8 years. We have something like 85,000 less apprentices and trainees today than we did back in 2013.
So that's all a critique
of a growing
of
economy, growing labour market, and they have not.
It's fair.
We've seen that go backwards. None of this equals economic.
But that's all a critique, but so that basically proves my point, though, doesn't it? That you're not making a pitch for a great, story of hope from Labor. You're not pitching it on necessarily your ideas. It's more to criticise Scott Morrison and his performance.
Well, we're certainly criticising Scott Morrison and his performance, but we're absolutely putting forward our ideas, and we have within the last week. I mean, if you look at the skills crisis as an example of the sort of problem that's facing the country, we've come up with a solution, and that's the provision of free TAFE. We are looking at making sure that, working with the states, every person who studies at TAFE in an area of skills shortage will be able to do that for free. Now, we've articulated a very detailed policy in relation to that. That's going to be front and centre in terms of what we take to the next election. And you can look at what we've said in relation to childcare. You can look at the announcement that we made in respect of emissions reductions. We actually have put in place a whole lot of detailed policy. In terms of climbing the technological ladder, and making sure that we have an economy which is generating the kind of well-paid, secure jobs that we need, we've put forward the National Reconstruction Fund so that it actually stimulates the economy in areas where Australia can reasonably expect to lead the world in science and tech if we do it right. So we're actually looking at all the issues that are facing Australia right now. We're trying to use this moment to reimagine the country, to see that we, in coming out of the pandemic, engage in a reconstruction which puts this country on a path to prosperity in the middle of this century. We're thinking about those challenges. We have a plan. Scott Morrison has none of that. I mean, Scott Morrison has been reacting to events from day one. And the final point with Scott Morrison is he declares wars on the premiers. There's no one who he won't have a political fight with, but when he gets into a corner, he always tries to lie his way out of it. And in Anthony Albanese, what we will have is a Prime Minister who acts with integrity and who tells the truth.
Mr Albanese's meeting with the South Korean president today, I want to ask you finally on this issue of the Labor approach to the region. Yesterday it was a very interesting answer from President Moon Jae-in when asked about the diplomatic boycott that Australia has undertaken alongside the United States. The South Koreans much more cautious when it comes to that. A reminder, isn't it, that there are different approaches to China, particularly for those who are next door to the behemoth?
Look, that may be right, but I think the fundamental point to make in terms of our relationship with Korea is that as we face the most challenging set of strategic circumstances that we really have since the end of the Second World War, when our pathway forward is probably not obvious, it's as complex as it's ever been, one matter is really clear, and that is that we need to be making sure that we have the best possible relationship with those countries in the region who are close friends, like Korea, like Japan. Korea has never been more important in terms of Australia's worldview than it is right now. We should be doing everything we can to be working closely with Korea, to be comparing notes about the sort of strategic circumstances that both of us share, and about the way through there. And I think the more we're doing that, the closer the relationship we have with them. That makes eminent sense in the context of the strategic landscape that we face today.
Yeah, but on that point, that uncertainty that you refer to, which I think is very fair to say it's an uncertain period, but there are different nuances and approaches, aren't there, from those who are close allies of ours, not the least of which Seoul.
I mean, there are, and let me be clear, we support the diplomatic boycott of the Olympic Games, but there are going to be differing approaches from different countries in the region, a lot of whom we may well share significant strategic interests with, and Korea is an example of that. I think that's okay, but we should be doing everything we can, and I think this is happening, to build the best relationship we can with Korea. As I say, our relationship with Korea, our relationship with countries like Japan, Singapore, countries like Indonesia, and the other parts of ASEAN. Absolutely. I mean, they have never been more important to us now and our worldview and our way forward than they are right now. And so, I welcome closer engagement with Korea. It's critically important. And I think it's really the defence industry announcement that was made as part of this is also significant. There's Hanwha is a great Korean company, and there's a really important geopolitical dividend associated with us doing more work with Hanwha.
Deputy Labor Leader Richard Marles, thank you for your time today and throughout 2021. We look forward to seeing you next year and to reconvening ahead of what will be a busy few months in the election.
Look forward to it, Kieran, and you and your family have a wonderful Christmas.
Thank you, and to you too.